Hi, I'm Jeff, and welcome to Apple Talk by Creative Computing. Today is July 23rd, 2012. So let's see. First thing, the new Retina display MacBook. I've checked it out. The video is noticeably better than the regular MacBooks, and it is definitely thinner. The typical MacBook's about this thick. It's about this thick. Hope you can see that from here. It looks really nice. One person, interestingly, reported watching a whole bunch of photos on it, slideshow, and getting a headache. An interesting tidbit. I don't know how much that affects everybody. And it's definitely a very nice machine, though. Very much like it. Also of interest, most people who have been buying them have been paying for the 750 gigabyte SSD drive, which is like a $900 upgrade, but people really want the storage. Very nice machine. Next in the news, Apple versus Samsung. It's been going on and back and forth. I'm just going to give you some news of the day for it. The court has ordered Samsung to stop selling the Galaxy in the United States until they can remedy the situation. The basic thing that Apple's using is that it violates a universal search patent. Apple uses Search Spotlight on the iPhone, which searches everything. Apple has a patent on the idea of searching everything. The Samsung Nexus does this, not allowed to be sold. Google may be the one who has to fix this functionality because it runs the Android operating system. So we'll see how this goes. Apple has had to pay a $100 million bond in case, in the end, Apple loses the case after it goes to trial. If Apple loses, the $100 million goes to Samsung for all the money that they lost in the interim while the case went on. The court re-allowed sales of the Galaxy for a few days about 2 weeks ago. Apple had to file a motion to have this taken away. Apple won this. Now the Galaxy is banned until some point after July 30th, not even sure when the Apple and Samsung actually go to trial. Likely, Apple will win, and this ban will hold till at least 2014. So we'll see how long this goes. Apple also may be able to use this as a precedent against other manufacturers. The whole legal thing's a big mess, but Apple seems to be pulling out. In another case, about to hit court in Germany, Apple is defending multi-touch. The way you take your iPhone, it can put a couple fingers on it and do this or that. Apple's defending that. If Apple wins, it'll be yet another blow to Android that's trying to use multi-touch features. In Australia, Samsung is suing Apple over use of certain 3G technologies. The judge has said this whole suit's ridiculous, and she's going to send it to arbitration, not even allow it to go to trial. A UK judge said that the Samsung Galaxy could be sold because it's not cool enough to possibly be confused with the iPad. So even though Apple kind of loses that one, it's an interesting win on a marketing front. I wonder if we'll see commercials with Apple saying that the iPad is cool enough. And I wish, just personally, my opinion, I'd like to see some competition. I'd like to see competition more revolve around the quality and usefulness as opposed to the law so much. I'd like to see an easier way when you have a good idea for other manufacturers to use something similar. I wouldn't want to see Apple's iPad be beaten by somebody who makes an identical clone, but I do know as a software developer, sometimes you get good ideas and you need to use them. And what if someone had patented, say, alphabetical order? Would no one else be able to use that? I don't know. It's just, I'd like to see some modification to our patent and copyright law. Next, Mountain Lion. Rumors are Mountain Lion will be released next week, or this week, on Wednesday, on July 25th, 2 days from now. Another rumor is it may incorporate maps. Not sure how it would incorporate them or why. The only idea that people have come up with, myself included, is that it allows for a greater integration of apps with iOS. For instance, you could make location-based reminders. Not sure what else. The new maps, though, on iOS 6 are very nice. And more on that in a little bit. Apple has posted an official list on their website of Mountain Lion compatible Macs. Generally, any 2008 or later 64-bit iMac that's using non-Intel only video, meaning they have an NVIDIA card or some other non-Intel video running the Mac. And must be 64-bit. If you launch Terminal on your Mac and you type uname, the letter U, name, one word, a space, and then a minus and an A, all lowercase, you'll get a little string about your computer. And at the end, if it says x86_64, you'll know you're a 64-bit. Don't worry, Terminal won't hurt anything. You can go straight from Snow Leopard to Mountain Lion. You don't need to go to Lion in the middle. which, again, you need the App Store, though, so you do need the latest Snow Leopard. We can help you get the Snow Leopard if relevant, so you can go straight to Mountain Lion. iOS 6. A bunch of news about iOS 6. Some is rumor, some has been seen. Apple has cracked down hard on sites that are selling iOS 6. If you're an Apple developer, you have access to iOS 6 right now so that you can test your apps. Some developer or another leaked iOS 6 out to the internet, and some people have been selling it. Apple's cracked down really hard on that, suing anybody who even remotely mentions it. As a result, that's pretty much no longer being sold. You can find a torrent or two. One of the things that really iOS 6 has that I really like is crowdsourced traffic. Picture this. So many people have iPhones. You can be pretty assured that if you're driving down the road, there's a bunch of people in cars near you that have iPhones. So with location data, Apple's computer knows where you are. It also knows the speed limit of where you are. So if the speed limit is 55 and you're going 20, and everybody else around you is going 70, Apple can reasonably conclude that something's wrong with your car. If you're going 20 and so is just about everybody else nearby going 20, Apple can reasonably conclude that there's a traffic jam. This information is available to you in the new iOS 6 mapping applications. You can see how much traffic is on your route. What I don't know if they've done, but they could further do with this is, say you have the iOS Map app routing you from point A to point B. And somewhere on the route, the shortest route or the fastest route or whatever route it is that you picked, there's a traffic jam. The Maps application could just adjust your directions accordingly. If everybody is using the most efficient route at all times, everybody will get there the fastest. You may not even know. If you just follow your directions from the mapping app without overruling it, you may get to your location faster, avoiding traffic jams. It's a very good use of traffic data. There was a move by Garmin and TomTom to do this with Bluetooth. Since their GPSs know the speed and the same information about how fast you're going, if you were to link your smartphone via Bluetooth to your GPS could potentially report this information back to Garmin or TomTom that could feed it back to your route. But this never really got off the ground. Most people aren't going to pair their phone with their GPS anyway, and TomTom and Garmin wouldn't all be chipping in on each other's data, and nobody has the penetration of the iPhone on the road. This is a great use of mapping technology. FaceTime. FaceTime is going to work over cellular, not just wireless. AT&T and Verizon so far have said they plan to charge extra for this. Not sure how that'll work. I'm also not really sure how they can tell which service you're using on your data plan, but nonetheless, they say they plan to charge extra. AT&T was a supporter of new net neutrality rules last year. These rules would prohibit the differentiation of data and charging more for one kind than the other. So it's still interesting to see what will happen. Sprint has announced that they will not, in fact, charge extra for FaceTime over 3G or 4G. I don't believe in the extra. I hope that doesn't happen. A consulting firm out there has said that iOS 6 has a 500 app limit. Interestingly, that would be kind of a backtrack. You could probably get about 1,000 on iOS 5. If you were to put as many apps as you could in every folder, fill every screen with just folders, have nothing but folders, and every folder and every screen maximized. The truth is, though, that by the time you get 500 apps on your phone, you'll have run out of storage. And how do you even know which app to use for which thing? 500 apps to me seems like most of them are unusable. I know on my iPhone here, I have, and you can see it. Wait, there we go. This is my main screen. It's not full. I like to have room so that I can shuffle. I only have, if you look at the dots, 7 screens. Most of mine are not folders. I have a couple of folders, but mostly they're not folders, and I use every app that I have. And I have to use it a lot to put it on here. I don't really have apps on here that waste my time or redundant apps that do the same thing. In fact, I'm so particular about that, I use the built-in weather app, even though rumors are that there's many better weather apps out there. I won't switch any app. One stock app, one weather app. I don't like duplicate anything. Okay, moving on. Amazon. Rumor is Amazon is developing a smartphone. That would be an interesting thing. They have a lot of money. They tend to sell things super duper cheap. It would be using Android and intended to compete with the iPhone and the Galaxy. It may also explain why Amazon bought a 3D mapping company called UpNext. There's a lot of mapping companies out there. I predict they will all ultimately converge. The data is really the key to where this is at. So we'll see. If Amazon brings out a phone, I bet it's dirt cheap, and we'll see if it competes or not. It won't have as many features, but they've done well with the Kindle Fire, which is dirt cheap, competes sort of with the iPad. Only good really at 1 or 2 tasks, but they're selling a lot of them. And in fact, when I talk about the 7-inch iPad coming up in a moment, a little bit more on that topic. New iPad, next topic. Digitimes reports that Apple may change the new iPad back to a single backlight. The new iPad, the 3rd generation, has 2 backlights to light up the screen. Some people say that may be the cause of the heat issue that was reported here when the iPad first came out, although I haven't heard anything about this recently. You may get a little more life out of it because you won't need as much power, and it also should be cooler. I mean, less power, less heat from the second bulb missing could be a much nicer iPad. Also, they may be switching displays from the Samsung to a thinner, sharp display. The thinner, sharp display supposedly uses a little bit less power, so more battery life, and will make the iPad even lighter. We'll see. I don't know if we can visualize the difference. It's also interesting that multiple manufacturers are making Retina displays. I predict we see a Retina display on the 13-inch MacBook Pro by the end of this year, although I'm not certain of that. 7-inch iPad rumors persist. 7.85 inches seems to be the exact size. That's about that big versus the current iPad at 9 and the iPhone. The current iPhone, 7-inch iPad, 9-inch iPad, and rumor of the new iPhone right about there as opposed to here. Some people have said it may feel more like an iPod Nano or an iPod Touch than a regular iPad. It might be positioned more to consume content. The regular iPad can make a lot of content, pages and iWork and the like, whereas a 7-inch one this big could be good for watching TV, little bits of surfing. It's a little bit lighter. If you hold an iPad for a long time, like sitting on the couch, it gets heavy. A 7-inch iPad may really fill a niche. We'll see. Most iPad usage currently is for entertainment use. Business use is increasing. I don't know. If the 7-inch iPad is made, it will take on Google's Nexus 7. Will Google be able to sell the Nexus 7? Depends on some of these lawsuits. The Nexus 7 is currently seen as more as competition to the Kindle Fire than the iPad. If Apple brings out an iPad in a $200 to $300 price point, it could be hard to beat for anybody. It would have to be a $200 to $300 iPad in order to not impact regular iPad sales. It may even be the case that the profit on the 7-inch iPad would rely on iTunes for the first time. Rather than Apple planning to make a profit on the hardware, they may plan to make a profit on all the related software and other content that you would download from from iTunes stores and the App Store. We'll see. It'd be an interesting twist if they didn't worry about the hardware like Amazon doesn't. Steve thought 7 inches was too small for an iPad, too small for your fingers. He had once said that it would have to be sold with sandpaper so you could whittle down your fingers to use it. It's an interesting statement given that even at 7 inches it's bigger than the iPod Touch and the iPhone, which work fine. The iPad does have bigger app icons. 7-inch, it could have the little app icons that the phone and the iPod has. A Retina display may make that point moot. Your fingers may fit well, they can get enough resolution and have enough icons. Although so far, Steve is correct. The 7-inch tablets from other manufacturers have not been all that popular. And on that line also, late at the end of September, Creative Computing will be offering here in Princeton at one of the local theaters a presentation on how to use the iPad and, for that matter, the Macintosh in a business environment. You're all invited. Just contact us. More rumors. The new iPhone still seems to be the fall. Definitely will be iOS 6, of course. A company in China says that they've started production and have released some pictures. Who knows? In the picture, though, that I saw, it looks like an iPhone. It has the metal lines that you see. Excuse me. It has the metal lines like here underneath my case. It looks like this. The dock is much smaller. It's the new mini dock that they've been talking about. Two Reuters sources also back the photo shot. They say that the reason that the mini connector port is down here is so that the headphone jack can be moved to the bottom. I think I would like the headphone jack at the bottom. But again, we shall have to see. there's some other part numbers just some other parts manufacturers in the United States that have been ramping up production for things related to the iPhone. None of them will name Apple by name. They say things like a large fruit company, a large consumer electronics company in the United States. Everyone knows it's Apple, but they can't say that. One company, Avago, A-V-A-G-O, a 4G part maker in Colorado, has a huge order for some of their 4G parts. Who else would need this? And they've been ramping up production, hiring, building equipment, and manufacturing capability. Texas Instruments has a power chip division. They've had their sales go through the roof, again to an unnamed vendor or customer. Fairchild Semiconductor and Maxim Semiconductor in California both increased orders for an unknown consumer electronics company. All of this always points to Apple. Everybody else announces everything. Apple doesn't really announce what they're doing and who they're doing it with. What else? Thunderbird. Mozilla is going to stop making Thunderbird. Mozilla is the company or the organization that makes Firefox. They're going to stop making Thunderbird and release it to the open source community. That could be interesting. Mozilla could go in a lot of ways. There's a lot you could do with email. Google bought an email company too. The name escapes me, but they just bought an email company. I wonder if Google will start making a local client. So it's hard to do everything using the website. And Google's email right now doesn't work well with your standard IMAP client. The folder system isn't so great. So if Google brought out their own email, maybe they would get better response using Gmail, which is a pretty popular email service. Anyway, big on the news. Apple withdrew from the EPEAT certification program. EPEAT it stands for Electronic Product Environmental Assessment Tool. Apple was a founder of EPEAT, and EPEAT is a big organization now that many electronics manufacturers get their products certified by to show that they are as environmentally friendly as electronics can be. Apple was a founder of this organization. And a lot of municipalities and the like won't buy, and other larger companies won't buy anything that's not EPEAT certified because they're trying to minimize their carbon footprint. In some parts of the world, your footprint, you have to pay if you go over a certain level. So buying EPEAT certified equipment helps you keep under your carbon quota. The likely reason for this is the Retina display does not adhere to the repairability requirements. It's a single unit. You can't take it apart. You can't replace the components. That's one of the requirements of an EPEAT certification. So prior to this withdrawal, every Apple product was rated gold, which is the highest certification you can get for your electronics with EPEAT. 2 days later, however, Apple reversed their decision and went back on EPEAT and is certifying everything they can certify. San Francisco had said no more Apple products, period. The federal government was leaning that way. A bunch of other organizations were. Apple, for once, changed their path. So we shall see what happens. It's not typical, though, for Apple to reverse themselves. And they relisted all products that qualify, and presumably they're working with the EPEAT certification board to find a way for the Retina display to qualify. Apple, separately now, next topic. Apple moved to number 55 in Fortune's Global 500 list, up from 111th place. That's an uptick of 56. That's huge. The ranking is solely based on revenue. Apple made $108 billion in 2011, including $25 billion profit. Ridiculous. I'd love to make some of that. Shell and Exxon are the number 1 and number 2. Shell, I think it is, made $408 billion, although they only yielded $30 billion in profit. So Apple has a much higher percent of profit. We'll see where Apple is next year. Office 2011. Microsoft releases an update and security fix. They keep releasing updates and security fixes to fix the various security holes and provide new features and bug fixes. Security-wise, Office on the Macintosh is much more secure than Office is on Windows. Most of the fixes in the latest updates focus on IMAP problems in Outlook. Outlook does a great job with Exchange. It doesn't do so well as a generic email client. They are working on it. It's only a version 1. I was a fan of Entourage, its predecessor, for a very long time. Right now, I use Apple Mail, but we shall see if I go back to Outlook or not. I'll keep you posted here on Apple Talk. Next, Apple's building another data center next to the North Carolina facility. It's a smaller one. It will have no employees. The doors have what they call man traps, meaning you go through 2 layers of doors and they can catch you in the middle if they need to. It's right next door to the other data center. Apple hasn't really announced what they're using it for. I could see them needing more and more data as they do more with iCloud. And with the crowdsourced mapping application, things like that, right now with a typical GPS, back to that mapping because I love it so much, with a typical GPS it tells you your route. If you turn off that route for whatever reason, it reroutes you. With Apple's approach, they can actually make you turn off that route for a reason that comes from the computer instead of a reason from you. Too much traffic ahead, go another way. Road construction, go another way. Things that your typical GPS might not be aware of. Also, I have the idea that Apple could potentially make a Macintosh that boots off the cloud. Picture this, a Macintosh with no hard drive, no local storage at all. You need a fast internet connection, yes, but it could boot off the cloud, it could store all your information on the cloud. You need a lot of data centers for this. So this will be the third one. They have one in Oregon as well that they're working on. A couple more things here today on Apple Talk. Qantas Airlines in Australia, they're going to offer iPads for in-flight entertainment. The idea is you get on the plane, they give you an iPad, it can access an onboard server for content. Panasonic will provide this. Presumably that's where you would get movies. I could see you ordering drinks and the like and everything else, calling the stewardess, whatever you want, communicating with other players, play video games on board, and probably, of course, internet. Rumors are they're going to buy 5,000 iPads. Separately, Qantas also is going to give every pilot an iPad to replace the 45 pounds of paper they have to carry onto every flight that has all the flight information and route maps and all the other emergency info and all that. 45 pounds of paper to a single iPad. They're going to buy another 2,200 iPads for that purpose. That's 7,200 iPads being bought by Qantas Airlines. Wish we could get that sale. Also, Qantas to reduce costs. I don't know how this reduced costs, but Qantas is replacing all of their corporate BlackBerries with iPhones. Another all Macintosh airline. And then finally for today here on Apple Talk, Google has made a complaint to the FTC saying that a good number of Apple patents should become FRAND patents. A FRAND patent is a patent for fair and reasonable use. It means that if you invent some really good idea, like alphabetical order, you have to let other people use it. There's just no other way around using that product. You can still license it, you can still charge money for it, but it can't be an expensive fee. You have to allow certain inventions to be used by everybody. You know, TV screens, displays are one of those. Headphones are one of those. There's a lot of them. So Google has made a complaint to the FTC saying that Apple has a whole bunch of patents that just due to their sheer volume should become FRAND patents. Apple has responded and said just because they're successful is the reason Google wants them. They should think of their own ideas. So it goes back and forth, probably yield the lawsuit, and there'll be a ruling. That's down the line. Google's point that popularity makes these things a standard and Apple ought to share. Anyway, that's it for today. We went over briefly the Retina display, Apple versus Samsung, news about Mountain Lion, iOS 6, Amazon having an smartphone, the new iPad, rumors about the 7-inch iPad, rumors about the new iPhone, a little bit of information about Mozilla stopping Thunderbird, Apple withdrawing, going back into the EP program, moving up in the Fortune 500, some news about Office 2011, Apple's second data facility, Qantas Airlines, and Google reporting Apple to the FTC. Let's see where that goes. Creative Computing will be offering a Mac in Business and an iPad in Business presentation near the end of September at a local theater. We will keep you posted on here, and I hope that you all can attend. And thank you very much for watching today's edition of Apple Talk by Creative Computing. If you would like to suggest a topic or ask a question on our show, please email appletalk@creativecomputing.com. Please visit Creative Computing for all your Apple needs, sales, or service. We are located at 423 Wall Street across from the Princeton Airport on Route 206. You can call us at 609-6833-MAC. Visit us online at www.creativecomputing.com. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, join our circle on Google+. We look forward to seeing you. Mention our Apple Talk TV show to any sales staff and receive 10% off accessories.